Dusk Golem, what the What's up, nerds? Welcome back to another episode of Nerd Space Games. Today, I'm actually taking a look at one of the newest leaks that just hit the internet by Dusk Golem, a reliable leaker for anything and everything related to Resident Evil. And it seems like that there's a lot of updates for the Resident Evil franchise as a whole, both good and kind of bad. Now, I want to start off by saying that I'm someone who's always been 50-50 with Dusk Golem. The guy has some crazy sources where some of them tend to be correct and he gets a lot of things right. But at the same time, he also has some sources that do not give him correct information. And it seems like what's going on today is proof of that. We're seeing proof that Dusk Golem has a bunch of sources that aren't always getting the correct information. And it's making him kind of look unreliable as a leaker because he is doing a lot of backpedaling and he is changing things a lot over and over. And it's just, there's just so much going on and I don't know what to say, honestly. With all these leaks and rumors coming all over the place, talking about different things altogether, I really don't know what to believe anymore. So before we dive down into the leaks, let's first take a look at Dusk Golem's tweet, which is where he pretty much covered all the information that we're going to talk about in this video. And then I'll start jumping into what I think about these leaks, if they're true, if I believe there's any truth to it at all, or if I think Dusk Golem just might be off his rocker, honestly. So let's take a look at the tweet right now, and he starts it off with, "Fuck it, I'm choosing to be the one to burst the bubble in a bigger way of what's going on with Resident Evil stuff. First, I would wipe the expectations of Resident Evil 9 being announced this summer period. The initial murmurs I heard I now do believe are right, and RE9's announcement is farther away than this upcoming summer. Sorry for the back and forth on that, that's completely my fault. RE1 remake rumors are bullshit. As far as I know, RE1 is not in any form of development at all right now. RE5 is not actively in development now either, and it's been funny seeing this be what people think is publicly happening. RE9 is pushed back to late 2025, 2026. If everything I've heard is correct, which I fully believe it is, I know others have hinted this, and I'm not the first to say this publicly. Actually, just it's not caught on. There's actually a remake of Resident Evil 0 and Code Veronica in development right now. I talked to many other behind the scenes about this at this point. It's something I heard over a year ago. Think it was going to get out whether I was the one to say it or not, and that's about it. Okay, so that's a lot. So let's go ahead and start diving down into this. Let's start with the bad news first. If what Dusk Golem says is true, then that means Resident Evil 9 is now getting pushed back to late 2025 or early 2026, which absolutely sucks because honestly, I had my money banking on the fact that it was going to release in January 2025. Now, this isn't the first time we heard Dusk Golem said that. As a matter of fact, we actually heard this a few weeks ago where Dusk Golem was saying that this game was getting pushed back and that was going to get delayed, but then he backpedaled on that, saying that he had other sources telling him that the game was coming sooner than he initially thought. So I'm not too surprised about hearing about RE9 being pushed back and getting a delay because, again, it's already kind of been making the rounds about the fact that there is going to be a delay on the game. That being said, I don't completely 100% believe Dusk Golem here, or at least I don't believe his sources. I want to make sure that's perfectly clear that I don't think Dusk Golem is being malicious or that he's doing this on purpose. I think he has a bunch of sources coming to him with different bits of information, and based off of what's happening in these next few days and what's been going on these last few days with the whole PlayStation event not actually happening and maybe turning into a state of play instead of a showcase now, I guess Dusk Golem is starting to lean more towards in the camp that, hey, I guess the game is in fact delayed. Something else that he actually went ahead and talked about as well, which was something that he covered a few days ago, I believe, is when the Resident Evil 1 remake was being rumored by a lot of reliable leaks. And according to Dusk Golem, he believes this is absolutely bullshit, that this is all lies, that none of these rumors or leaks are true about this game, and that as far as he is concerned, he has not heard anything about Resident Evil 1 being in development as of right now. Which leads me to probably the biggest bit of information that I want to talk about, and that is the announcement, at least the leak announcement, of potentially 2 more Resident Evil games, more specifically remakes of Resident Evil games, as it looks like we might be getting a Resident Evil 0 and a Code Veronica, which are in development right now, according to Dusk Golem. Now, this bit of information catches me both off guard and also is kind of expected. For example, Code Veronica is something that I figured was going to be in development at some point. There's a lot of fans asking for this game to get remade. It's a game that deserves a remake. It's a game that definitely needed a remake, and honestly, I felt like it was going to happen sooner rather than later. The more surprising bit of information here, though, is the fact that Resident Evil 0 is apparently in development too, which is kind of weird considering the fact that Dusk Golem is also saying the Resident Evil 1 remake is not actually happening, which is really strange because you would think Resident Evil 1 remake makes a lot more sense for Capcom to go ahead and revisit before a game like Resident Evil 0, which wasn't really that popular with the fan base. Not to mention, I want to go ahead and say that while I'm a huge fan of Resident Evil 0 and I'm one of the few people that actually enjoy the game, there really isn't that much information in terms of the lore in that game that's necessary right now for the remakes, whereas Resident Evil 1 does a lot of setting up with Albert Wesker and Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine's story. So it's just strange to me that Resident Evil 0 is the game that Capcom's going to choose to focus on first, more specifically ahead of one other remake, which I guess we should probably go ahead and talk about that now, because apparently Resident Evil 5 is also not being worked on right now. It's not in development. Now, this is probably the biggest surprise because while I kind of expected a Code Veronica remake, and I kind of, sort of expected a delay for Resident Evil 9, I don't think I expected that Resident Evil 5 would not be in development, but Resident Evil 0 and Code Veronica are both in development at the same time. That is completely bonkers to me. I mean, let's not forget, guys, Resident Evil 4 Remake actually teased RE5 Remake. So you would think that Capcom would want to hurry up and jump on that train and collect that income from Resident Evil 5 Remake because they have a lot of people waiting for that game now, despite a lot of us old school fans wanting Code Veronica first. And let's go ahead and go deeper into this, because if we're going to believe Dusk Golem, which is a whole different story, it's a whole different argument that can be made, is if we should actually believe Dusk Golem, because as of right now, I have no fucking idea if we can even trust anything that he says, because it seems like his sources are all over the place. But if we did decide to choose to believe Dusk Golem and what he says right now, I actually want to go one step farther back and take a look at his other leaks when he talked about 5 different Resident Evil games apparently in development as of right now. Because guess what? We just got confirmation of 2 more from Dusk Golem. That is Resident Evil 0 and Code Veronica. And with RE9, that is now 3 out of 5 of those titles. But we also deconfirmed 2 other potential titles. Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 5 are not the other 2 games being worked on. So now it kind of begs the question, what are the other Resident Evil games that are apparently being worked on according to Dusk Golem's leaks? Well, by process of elimination, it doesn't seem like it's a remake. So that means these other 2 games have to be spin-offs, which actually brings me back to even an older leak when we learned about the fact that Resident Evil Revelations 3 and Resident Evil Operation Hank, aka Operation Hunk, was in development. Is it possible that we could actually be seeing a Rebecca Chambers-led video game that focuses on the 3rd Revelations game? Could we see a game all about Hunk, the Grim Reaper? I mean, those are some distinct possibilities, and actually, the likeliness of those being the other 2 games that are in development just went up, because I don't know what other games Capcom could be working on for the Resident Evil franchise if not a Resident Evil 5 remake or an RE1 remake. But now I want to go ahead and end this video with talking about the fact that Dusk Golem is all over the place, and now I have to give you guys my honest opinion about if I believe anything that he has said these last 6 months. Because honestly, I've gone back and forth. I'm really truly 50-50 on this. I'm really split, and I don't think it's his fault. I just think that he has a lot of sources that are giving him a lot of misinformation, and it's just all over the place right now. So this is what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say you guys should go ahead and trust your own judgment. Either Dusk Golem is right about most of this, and that means Resident Evil 1 Remake is not happening, Resident Evil 9 is getting delayed, but we are getting Code Veronica and Resident Evil 0 remakes, or we go with the other leaks where Resident Evil 9 could still come in January, and Resident Evil 1 Remake all over again can come in 2026. Personally, this is what I'm going to go with. I'm going to say Resident Evil Code Veronica is definitely being remade. I'm going to say that that game is definitely in development as we speak. I'm going to say Resident Evil 9 is still going to come some point in 2025. It may not be in January anymore, but I still think it's going to come in 2025. And I'm actually going to say Resident Evil 1 Remake is in development. I think Dusk Golem has it wrong there, because to me, it doesn't make sense for Capcom to explore Resident Evil 0, but not Resident Evil 1. Well, that's it for today's episode of Nerds Based Games. Guys, hit up the comments because there's a lot of crazy shit going on. There's another video that I'm going to have to do right after this where I talk about my predictions for the recently announced Silent Hill transmission on May 30th. So get ready for that video. It's probably going to come out not long after this one, if I'm being completely honest. But I want to know your opinions about all of these rumors and leaks relating to Dusk Golem. Has he become a less reliable source to you? Do you trust anything that he's saying right now? Which games do you actually think are in development? And do you think Resident Evil 9 is actually getting delayed and we're not going to see it this summer at all? Let me know in the comments down below. But thanks for watching. As always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Nerd Space Games. Take care.